They're not coming up with.
नहीं सर, कहाँ कुछ है ही नहीं लाइनअप में। सब तो है, सब तो मतलब ऑनलाइन है, तो क्या करूं। क्लोज माई आइज,
एग्जैक्टली अरे
क्लोज योर आइज भी देख ली।
काथल भी आ गया।
काथल
वो
कहाँ
नहीं
पे
है
है?
ना, टेस्ट ऑफ थिंग्स नहीं है ना।
मुझे आपको देखनी है तो आप मेरा प्लेक्स अकाउंट लेके देख लो, बट आपको
प्लीज यार, आई रियली वांट टू वॉच।
वो अच्छा
मतलब
अब देख
मैं
रही
ये
है।
बोल रहा हूँ फिर
अब देख रही है,
फिर भी।
तब नहीं जब मैंने कहा था देखने के लिए।
यार मैंने वो भी नहीं देखी अभी तक।
क्या?
फोर डॉटर्स।
हाँ वो तो भेजी हुई है मैंने आपको।
यार वो
वो
तो
तो
वो
आपको
वाला
अच्छी भी
लिंक
नहीं
है ना।
लगेगी। फोर डॉटर्स और वो सब है तो
फक ऑफ।
इसी से चालू करेंगे हम लोग ये पॉडकास्ट। हेलो हेलो
हिरानी
हेलो।
मुझे तो सही लगी।
We will include that section of his life also a little bit. But hello, hello, hello.
Yeah.
Welcome to today's podcast, which is essentially a rebuke or rebuttal to whatever nonsense Amartya and Varun were saying on the live stream about Rajkumar Hirani's films. They had the full ground essentially when we were recording on Dunki to bash Rajkumar Hirani's films and whatever they don't
They
like about
don't.
him.
They're not
I
fond
mean, they are
of
not
their
fans.
Saudi
I
films
I mean, they are weird, okay? Because they were. I know they'll listen to this, but yes, you guys will get a lot of
because
slack
they
in
like
this.
Kerala, you mean, and
That is a
Rajkumar.
perpetual problem. But no, the
Yeah.
bigger problem. I was like, they don't consider him an auteur, and I was like, really?
Okay. Wow.
I was like,
Yeah.
you are saying he has a formula and then you don't consider him an audio. I was like, doesn't really compute, like, in my head
Yeah.
what you're on about there. Anyways, I won't slander them that much considering they are not here to defend themselves. But yes, we will be discussing mostly the good stuff of Rajkumar Hirani's filmography. Aryan will chip
Hmm.
in a little bit in the beginning about Dunki. I think for others who are looking forward to our opinions, what we had on Dunki, Amartya and Varun already discussed that in the live stream. So none of us liked it. So just to summate it in that way. But yeah, we will
Yeah.
primarily be
Which
discussing
in
Munna.
itself says, which in itself says that I liked it way better than you guys did.
You didn't like it that much better also than us. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I
Obviously.
to think it's terrible. And one of the reasons I
Okay.
found it terrible is because I've been on a rewatch binge of sort of, the
Hmm.
4 or 5 Hirani films, which I remember really liking. And then I was told
Hmm.
considerably, since I got into films more and more that, Rajkumar Hirani's filmmaking is a little iffy. You might not
Hmm.
like his films now that you revisit it, but that was the same thing that was told to me about like, Dharma's films and whatever stuff I liked
Hmm.
essentially when I was not
Yeah.
into quote unquote cinema in capital letters. So
Hmm.
like I was a little scared going into, watching his films. But yes, I mean, for whoever's not familiar with Rajkumar Hirani, which is a bit hard to believe considering whoever's not into cinema also, I think he's one of the few names that like comes up and along with
Yeah.
your Karan Johar and sort of your Sanjay Leela Bhansali
I
and
mean, even more so than them, right? In terms of the box office numbers, the
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
family crowd that he's pulled in
Absolutely. I
theaters
mean,
since early
Three Idiots
2000s.
itself is such a big phenomenon. I
Yeah.
feel like that sort of worked so much across like,
Yeah.
different like whatever
Definitely.
barriers there are there. So I think
Demographics as well.
absolutely. So yes, but just to like
Yeah.
summate, like small summation of his whatever filmography, like and how it started through. I think he passed out of FTII in Pune, which Aryan is visiting very soon,
Yes.
and he passed out as an editor. So that's a good, like I
Yeah.
think that's itself is a sort of because I do think some of his films have good editing stuff in them, even though they're not like whatever predominant.
Minus
Minus
minus Dunki.
and Sanju. And even some of his early,
Yeah.
like
Right.
even of his good films, like
I
I don't think
do.
they're
Are
amazingly
we
edited.
considering that his film though? Is it a
Sanju,
film? Or is it a? Is it just a
I
propaganda
think
piece?
Sanju is a better quote unquote film than Dunki. So you make of that
Yeah. I
whatever.
mean, it's certainly more coherent, right?
I mean, we'll discuss a little bit about Sanju. That's the one film we'll
Yeah.
probably exclude because I just don't consider that. Well, it is his film, but it's also like one of those living people's biopics, which you're like, how do
Hmm.
you make it? And he's his friend. I'm like,
framing
come
device
on.
in itself is a bit,
Yeah.
iffy. So
Yeah.
it's yeah,
I'm like, come on, you can't, yeah, whatever. Anyways, he
yeah.
passed out of FTII. He worked first time for like a professional film, like a feature length film with Vinod Chopra as an editor
Mm,
in Mission Kashmir in 2000.
yeah.
Then he made his debut. Vinod Chopra produced it. I think he also worked on it uh, as a writer. And then he wrote it with him, not with Abhijat Joshi, who joins him later after that in all the projects. Munnabhai M.B.B.S was 2003. That's a very, it sort of revamped Sanjay Dutt's career. And when we get to that movie, also his image, which is a very cynical thing about underneath all the really goodwill of the movie.
Mm,
That's some really, you can like draw upon that as being super cynical. And then
yeah.
2006 was the sequel, Lage Munnabhai, which sort of built upon
Mm,
those principles. I thought it didn't do that well, but I checked it's the second highest grossing film of that year.
yeah.
So it
It
did
did
really well.
really, really
Yeah.
good, really good. I
Yeah, yeah.
remember.
And apparently, it's actually now. I know Sanjeet was about to join us, but couldn't. But Sanjeet said that he's never clicked with that film, or
Hmm.
always. But I
Yeah.
was sort of going back and reading some of the reviews, and actually, there's been the one of the most effusive praises for his films is actually Lage Munna Bhai, in terms of critics at
Okay.
that time, at that point in time, and Munna Bhai M.B.B.S and PK also. I think Three Idiots actually has a mixed reception, quite a mixed
Yeah, I
reception
remember.
from
Yeah.
critics at
Because
that
again,
time.
it's an adaptation, so it's
Yeah.
understandable. And Chetan Bhagat was at the top of his whatever game during that
Yes. Yes.
time. So
Yeah.
it's just
So
not
yeah.
saying a
So I
lot, but
think yes. But yes, after 2006, then comes 2009 with Three Idiots, which is a sort of biggest break, and then after that it just sort of exploded. We will be
Hmm.
discussing that in detail because both me and Aryan really like it. I mean, I like all of his
Yeah.
movies outside of these two recent things that I've released.
Yes.
So that, and then we will be discussing PK 2014, which I know Aryan is a bit cold on, but again, the context, especially if it's in today's context, there's a
Oh
proper
yeah.
revolutionary side to the whole film now that comes with it, which we will of course be discussing, and also discussing whatever comparisons entail with oh my God, and if that sort of is
Hmm.
justified or not. But yeah, that's sort of the
Oh my
main
God, it
thing.
was 2012, the
It
first
was
one,
before
and this
before
was
PK. It was two
okay, and
years
this was
later.
2014
2 years
or
later. Yeah,
13.
yeah. 14,
Okay,
14,
okay,
14.
okay.
But yes, Aryan, you can start us with your thoughts on Dunki, because that is sort of, the now the dust has sort of settled, and it's become sort of a semi-hit rather than, the
Yeah.
blockbuster that people were expecting. But yeah,
I
you were
think
saying
it's
before.
fairly managed its momentum because as people would expect from, I mean, even this was the same case with Three Idiots as well.
Yep,
I mean, it obviously had a great opening, but his films tend to grow over the discourse because of the word of mouth,
yep,
which despite of the negative quote unquote reviews that Dunky received, it's still clearly not enough of a
yep.
reason for
I mean, it's
families
a
to not
crowd
go
pleaser, no?
and watch.
Still, in some
Definitely,
senses.
definitely.
Yeah.
And I think Hirani's. So this is what I wrote in my review that
Hmm.
uh, Dunky. It's very weird that it's actually not weird, but very ironic that Dunky and Oldfield came out in the same year, right? Because both these films function on the same template and same story beats that
Mhm.
both respective filmmakers have built their entire careers out of. Okay.
Yep.
And the reason why I compare these two films is, of course, because we know that these two people, these two artists, filmmakers, storytellers have worked together on
Yep.
multiple projects, co produced, co directed, edited each other's
Well.
films on whatever.
Mm.
And I think it presents a proper dichotomy with these two films coming out in the same year because
Mm.
uh, it remains a testament to how whenever people say that this kind of storytelling is redundant, it's an
Mhm.
underdog story, it's a generic story, it
Yep.
has all those beats that we've all been seeing since
Mm.
decades. I think it really does not matter as long as your filmmaking prowess, as long as the
Mhm.
filmmaking prowess behind it is as consistently riveting in the
Mhm.
way. in the way in which Vidura Chopra presented 12th fail bit.
Hmm.
But the reason why Dunki flounders at
Hmm.
that is because unfortunately it's really difficult for people like us who have been the champions of Hirani's
Hmm.
school of cinema.
Hmm.
It's really difficult to realize and see this that he's clearly not evolved as a filmmaker, I would say, even
Hmm.
though that would sound very harsh. I clearly I don't
No,
dislike
no,
that way
he's
though. So
clearly devolved in
yeah,
terms of the last two films to 100%, I would agree.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
So
the argument that goes is that after this split
hmm,
with Vidhu Chopra, which itself was based on an allegation which was never
yeah.
sort of, like there is no conclusive evidence and none of
Hmm,
it. The main evidence is that these two people who used to be super close friends and had a business relationship separated ways.
hmm,
So there was a sexual assault allegation on Rajkumar and
yeah.
Rani
During the Me Too movement.
during the Me Too movement. And I was reading about it and I was quite, yeah, I was reading about it right now and I was like, yeah,
Hmm,
very dodgy how to think
hmm,
about him as a filmmaker after that. And there are
yeah.
moments, and again, picking apart things after knowing this stuff has
Hmm,
happened, then it becomes like a retroactive fitting of stuff, like Three Idiots mein balatkar wala
exactly.
and whatever, that joke sort of
Hmm.
becomes a different, you can pick it out into a different meaning or whatever.
That's
But
a
anyways, we
very
we we
sinister undercurrent and yeah.
yeah, but which is fine, like we can discuss that, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
go
think
ahead.
it's also very sad that as a country, as consumers of culture and pop
Hmm.
culture, it's this is the biggest repercussion that has come out of those allegations that
Yeah,
oh now these two great storytellers aren't working together anymore, and the result is a very different kind of trajectory that both of them have been
yeah.
fallen on two different sides. But the
Hmm.
only reason why Dunky doesn't come even close to a film as monumental, I would say, as 12th Fail is because he, like Hirani as a filmmaker, seems to be talking with his audience with the same kind of sensibilities with which he once did during the
Yeah,
mid early 2000s. And I
yeah,
think clearly he's not evolved in terms of uh, the way he
yeah.
frames those
I
characters,
to think honestly,
irrespective of the
Aryan, that
storybeats.
his like the things he does well inside his template also are badly done in Dunki. That is one of
Oh,
the
okay.
other things for me. The big, like I think the film is structured only like badly. I won't even say
Don't
like
you think
wrong.
it's structured in the same way in which Three Idiots was?
It
The
is,
framing device
but
of
the
it.
problem, see, the biggest problem is that in Three Idiots, imagine if Three Idiots began with them finding Rancho
Yeah. Oh,
and
okay.
then working backwards towards it.
Hmm.
Here it's like what is going to happen to a bunch of characters at the beginning,
Hmm.
and then you
Yeah.
follow them on a journey, and then you have to like create suspense of are they
But
going
the
to survive, not
suspense is
survive.
about creating the tension, right? That how do they end up in this spot? Why do they
I mean,
want to go
I
back
but
home?
then all that's
But
done badly.
it's yeah, I get it.
Yeah. No, no, but if you don't have that, at least you have the tension of who survives or doesn't survive, right? Like essentially, you create
Hmm.
that tension by not putting that idea that that flashback at the beginning of the film. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Why? Because and in Three Idiots, that is there, but it's just really well peppered in throughout the film. Like
Yeah.
that track is moving really well in
And
conjunction
it's
with the
constantly
flashback track.
keeping you on the edge, right? Building
Yeah,
up that curiosity that who is this Rancho guy after all?
yeah,
That
yeah,
why is he such a big deal for these
yeah,
guys and why haven't they seen him for years? I
yeah.
think again, Three
Huh,
Idiots and just
but
getting
exactly,
goosebumps.
exactly. There is suspense
Yeah.
even in that. I mean, again, suspense in a lighter tone, but yes, suspense of
Yeah.
who is he, what will they find or whatever like that.
Yeah.
In Dunky, there is no suspense as such. Like I think, like they
Hmm.
set it up as Tapsi Pannu and these people are returning home already,
Yeah.
and then again, the bigger problem of all this is if your love story is built on longing and people being separated, there is no longing or being separated in the film. Like people aren't
Hmm.
apart in the film at all. They are literally
Yeah.
communicating with each other or next to each other all the time. So lots of like
Yeah.
these are like the smaller issues within the template, I think, which is and
Makes
again
sense. Yeah.
that Shah Rukh Khan overpowering thing might also be there, but we
Yeah.
again, Three Idiots is actually a good template to compare Dunki with, and what works and what doesn't
Hmm.
work in Dunki. I
Hmm.
think, but yes, but
I
yeah,
think it's
12. Yeah,
also Dunki has that typical cardboard character problem that Shah Rukh Khan is basically the same kind of angelic figure that he's played
yeah.
in like way better films like Kal Ho Na Ho and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just there that oh he was once a soldier.
And he has
Now he's
bad
just
bad de-aging and then bad artificial
yeah.
sets and whatever.
Hmm.
Yeah, that all is the
Hmm.
issue.
But
And
still,
even
I found the like cultural setting up this cultural space wala element fairly like good.
you found the dynamic, I think, much more engaging than I did between the
Yeah,
characters, right? Because I
yeah.
thought one of that was I was like, in Dunki there was barely any, and he's very good at this.
Camaraderie.
Camaraderie, and even just like bit part characters, I didn't feel anything there was much to them apart from anything, like, there's only
Yeah, yeah,
one detail for one of the side character, not a side, but he's like one of the three who goes and is
yeah.
coming back, like the mother wearing the jeans and the different thing
Oh
is
yeah.
that one detail is
Hmm.
there, but then there is hardly any
Hmm.
detail for Tapsi's character. There's like very minimal, like why she needs to go
Hmm.
back. And then even the other
Hmm.
character, there's barely anything. So, like,
Yeah.
those are moments which, like in Three Idiots, for example, you have all
Hmm.
three characters, even though Amir Khan is clearly the front and center, Madhavan and Sharman Joshi aren't like just there. They
Yeah.
have their own
Props. Yeah.
issues, and like, I mean, their families themselves are so vividly defined in the
And
film.
their issues clearly have consequences in the narrative framework of the
Hmm.
film itself, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So that's the whole, how you pass through it all in that
Hmm.
aspect. So yeah, Edibo thoughts are Dunky. Then we can move on to the good stuff then, because this we will leave behind. Uh,
I think Dunki, in general, I think it would only be, I wouldn't say only be remembered for it, but I think it would mainly be remembered for how it bookended this
hmm.
extraordinary year that SRK had,
Yeah.
both in terms of reviving theater, cinema,
Hmm.
whatever cinema going experience, and reinvigorating his own stardom, giving it a new face, a new energy. And obviously, the year started with with Pathan
Pathan.
in January, and it
Hmm.
ended with Dunki. So it's going to be remembered. It's going to be very memorable because of that. But again, the kind of sensibilities that he's talking with, it's clearly very dated, and even the messaging, by the way, the didacticism of all of it, it is very early 2000s, post 9/11 kind of messaging, which is like,
Hmm.
oh, your
But I
whole
think,
country, and
I think all of these, like all of his movies have a preachiness to them, but I
yeah,
have never felt them, and this is what I was saying. This is why I was a bit, annoyed when Amartya brought Three Idiots or whatever this up, or
yeah,
when we were discussing Kho Gaye Hum Kahan, which I think is reiterating
yeah,
garbage.
yeah,
Like when we were discussing that, he had brought up Rajkumar Hirani, and I was like, well, one of the big things about Hirani and one of the great things he does is his films don't feel like they're talking down to us. He feels like we are
exactly.
on the
It doesn't
level
have a
plane.
condescending tone.
Yeah, it doesn't. Like I think it's very much, he's entertaining you. He's operating at a broad, melodramatic, high pitch. And at that
Yeah,
level, a sort of, preachiness functions much more naturally compared to when
it feels like a
you're,
breeze rather than a slap
yeah.
of
Yeah, I mean, slap
yeah,
is Anubhav Sinha's, which is, I mean, thappad, yes. So,
yeah,
but yes,
yeah,
like it makes sense. In
yeah,
Zoya Akhtar ka cinema, it's like a light slap. I'm like, light slap se
हाँ,
kya hone wala hai? Like, or
hmm,
whatever, like a lecture, which I think is the
yeah.
big issue. Yeah.
It is lecturing, yeah.
Yeah. And I
And
think,
it's the thing is, it's his films are, fairly like they don't have the kind of moral posturing the kind of these contemporary films like
yeah.
the Akhtar films have, right?
Hmm.
And I think, see, I totally get why a lot of people who wouldn't be very fond of Keijo cinema, for say, won't be into Hirani cinema, or
Hmm.
say uh, Sanjarila Bansali's cinema, because
Yes.
I think, and this I just before we started recording this,
Hmm.
I was just realizing, and I was just sitting back, and I realized that I don't think there's any more directors who are more traditionalist in their terms of in their way of storytelling.
Hmm.
contemporary filmmakers, of course, in Hindi cinema,
Hmm.
who are more traditionalist than these three, right?
Hmm. I mean,
But again,
we have our SRV or whatever his face is.
oh yeah, yeah.
वो
Huh,
तो वो तो
definitely.
old age, ancient age, whatever. Let's go back
Yeah.
to prehistoric times type of stuff. Yeah. Uh,
But yeah, you get what I mean. It's
yeah. I
like
get what you
proper,
mean.
like, this is what Bollywood is meant for.
Yeah.
We'll give you,
I
like,
mean,
we'll
Anand
give
will
you a
try also,
proper
no, to some
masala.
extent. To some extent, I
But
feel.
see, the reason why I'm saying these three filmmakers is
Hmm.
because I don't think Hirani would be in on this list anymore, considering the trajectory he's going on.
Hmm.
But these three filmmakers have always, to a certain extent, at least up until this point, have known how to evolve
Hmm.
with
Yeah.
generations, right? In their
Yeah.
masala storytelling,
Yeah.
grandiose template,
Yeah. Yeah.
where
Yeah.
it's there's no moral posturing. It is all supposed to be extremely heightened, and yet you will
Hmm.
your takeaway would be something that is really generic, but it would be
Yeah.
something very ingrained into the story that they are
Hmm.
kind of telling.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think
So
that's
yeah,
totally fine. I think my issue with, and we will move on to his films after this. I think my issue with a lot of these the newer sort of the way Bollywood is moving and like trying to
yeah,
mold itself in a sort of slightly Western, slightly whatever, like a mix of
mm-hmm.
Western, and that mix is the issue, I think, sometimes. Like sometimes, of
Mm-hmm.
course, it's a good, some people can mix it really well. Like I would say something like your Sriram Raghavan does a great job of mixing different,
Yeah,
Western genres with Indian genres, uh,
perfect. Yeah,
or someone else also. But like the issue, I think, with I think the Zoya Akhtar brand, which is I'm not against her.
yeah,
I've loved her films before, so like it's like this is like a new thing, but it's like they want it both ways. Like they want it to be
exactly.
slightly melodramatic and all that, but they also want it to be, this preachy thing or like slightly, oh yeah, but what slightly is the issue. Like it's like commit to one thing, or right, commit to one thing and then
I
go
think
for it.
it's they are just unconsciously just trying to cover up the dilemma that they are in
I
from their
suppose.
from the approach they are selecting, and they are
Hmm.
trying to constantly cover it and sheathe it through this moral posturing that their
Yeah.
films often tend to have. So I think that's just not for me, and
Yeah.
it's perhaps obviously that could be because I have grown up loving the kind of
Hmm.
cinema that Hirani made
Yeah.
through the 2000s, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
yeah, I remember like it was one of my first
Hmm.
films that I watched with my entire family. For one of the first Hindi films in the
Hmm.
theater was Lage Raho, Munnabhai.
Hmm.
It came out in 2006, and I
Six.
remember I remember the crowd, and I remember the vibe, the anticipation surrounding that film.
Hmm.
And yeah,
Yeah. Let's move on to Munnabhai M.B.B.S. then before Lage Raho, which is a
definitely.
2003 release, and it is his first film. So I think, and it's also a very good introduction to what I think is his like classic melodramatic clash of opposite
Mhm.
ideals, which is
Yeah.
in the title in many ways, which is Munna Bhai and M.B.B.S., which is two things which don't fit
Mhm.
together but are made to fit
Mhm.
together in the title
Yeah.
itself. And then very much the film goes from the conflict of placing this g- essentially goon, but he's like not a very violent goon. Like he's presented almost throughout as like quite nice,
Yeah.
which will dovetail a little bit into the whole Sanjay Dutt's image thing, which
Yeah.
I was like, I hated thinking about it while I was watching it. I was like, I don't want that cynicism to creep into me, considering the film is
Yeah.
working on such a great emotional level. But yeah, I think
Mhm.
you kind of see all the sort of template things which will sort of become a mainstay in his film. So like it's the odd one out stuck in a campus environment, and then campus environment in there you have him both laughing with the people there, almost making them laugh, making us
Yeah.
laugh, but also consistently teaching us or whatever, teaching us the simple things. Like I think one of the big
Hmm.
problems, I think, when I was talking to at least Amartya and Varun, I got the impression that they are wanting something super intricately messaging or
Hmm.
whatever. I'm like, but he doesn't operate on those levels. He's operating on
Exactly.
broad
Exactly.
mainstream
Broad
levels. If
strokes level. Yeah.
Yeah, broad strokes, but good broad
Hmm.
strokes. It's not like
Exactly.
it's hard to do that also. Like, I think people can do broad
I think
strokes
it
and then
is
come across to,
it's one
yeah,
of the most difficult things to do. I
yeah,
mean, people nowadays look back at these films and expect it to function on the kind of sensibilities that they have developed as
yeah,
adamant consumers of good cinema,
yeah,
international cinema. But it's actually much more difficult to
yeah,
appreciate and make a film like that,
yeah.
right?
No, no, and it's
And
really,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, I think so I know I watched it recently and you watched it like a while
yeah,
back in lockdown, but I think
yeah,
I'll mention like my issue. I think the one issue I had with the
mm,
film, and this is kind of the whole, probably first time a filmmaker is making it, there's a distinct lack of flow, like a total flow in terms of how the film moves
yeah.
from one incident to
One
another.
scene to other.
It
Mm,
like from scene to scene, there's a slight disconnect in terms of how it's moving, but the content within scenes is terrific.
mm,
Like everything. Like it's such a he's a great writer at doing setups and payoffs. He's like those things are very good, and like he handles them so well here. Like I think in the beginning, it's the whole. Of course, they are. If you remember the movie, it's basically them play acting first to like do the which also features a cameo by
Setting
Nawazuddin.
up a clinic and all.
Yeah, setting up a clinic and they're
Yeah.
doing the play act. But then next scene may there's a really emotional moment with his mother where he's talk where she's
Oh
like
God.
where she's saying कि कुछ गलत चल रहा है या तुम इतना tense क्यों लग रहे हो, and then he's basically, and then there's the moment of the jhappi moment, the what's it, jadoo ki
Yeah.
jhappi, sort of
Jadoo
like
ki
that,
Jhappi.
which will come back later. Later, two times
Hmm.
actually. There's the whole altercation with the father, and which is again Sanjay Dutt and
Hmm.
Sunil Dutt sort of playing
Yeah.
together. First time I think on screen as like father and son.
Hmm.
And then there's a moment again which recurs where while they are leaving the house, Sanjay Dutt is asks for the Jadoo Ki Jappi, and I think that's
Hmm.
like really effective. I think they use some of the Mission Kashmir ka background score in some of the
Oh,
instances because it's like really
okay.
evocative. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so while watching Munna by M.B.B.S, one of the things was like there are so many things in this film I would not like now. Like
Hmm.
if these things someone else was doing,
Hmm.
I would be just like, why that much background score? Why this, like the background score, but I really like the background score. And I think one of the things I was noticing why I like it is because they have made songs and they've converted
Hmm.
them into background music and used those
Hmm.
as, the background score rather than having like a super generic thing. So it's like, it
Hmm.
consistently feels very much evocative of the
In
songs
tune
and
with the, yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like each character will have like their own tune to like
separate
introduce
tune.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
That's actually really
Yeah,
clever.
yeah, like Gracie Singh enters with the whatever, who's actually quite nice in the film.
Hmm. I
Uh,
think it may have been, now when I think of it, it may have been the movie that at least in Bollywood started this trend of using music in such an intricate way where it is, actively on a subconscious
yeah,
level
yeah,
pushing the narrative forward.
yeah. No, no, absolutely. I mean, it's my favorite character of the film, and it's this will happen for about two, three of these movies. Is Boman
Yeah,
Irani's Doctor Asthana, who I think is like just is like phenomenal. And I mean, again, this is another thing. I was like, you give some character a quirk, and I'm
yeah,
generally like, this is such an annoying thing. Why is this character doing
yeah,
this? But his quirk is so perfect in this. He like, which I mean, if people remember, I think it's very much he laughs
yeah,
whenever he's tense, which is such a
yeah.
great
Or
thing because
anxious.
because it like does both things of making the scene super
Yeah,
funny, but it's also like pretty sometimes tense. I
yeah,
think one of my favorite performances when he's in the he's discussing like why he's how he's like passed the exam, and he's like laughing
yeah.
hysterically like he's like really mad, and then the peon comes and peon is like मुन्ना भाई वो हमारे कॉरिडोर में कोई bed laga le la or something very tapuri in that way. And
Yeah.
he's trying to laugh, but he's also like moving out of the room, and he's like an offhand comment. He's basically like, "What is this laga le raha hai?" Like,
Oh, yes, I
dictionary
remember.
karo. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's like
That's
littered with
great.
all
Yeah.
these things, which is so good. And I'll let you go after this. Like, I think just one of the big things with the both the Munna Bhai films, which I think sort of leaves even Hirani's sensibilities in the other two films, he's selected the antagonist really well in both Munnabhai M.B.B.S and Lage Munnabhai as Baman Hirani's character, because the main
Hmm.
antagonist here actually has very good emotional stakes within the whole. Like, they are
Yeah.
antagonists, but they're very closely linked to
Exactly. Like
the
him
central
basically
characters.
dating his daughter,
Dating his
of
daughter,
it,
yeah,
of
yeah.
her being a childhood,
Yeah,
whatever,
yeah, yeah,
reconnections.
exactly. And he's a good father in
Even
this.
that scene when he realizes it and he
Oh,
starts
it's so
giggling
good.
and laughing. So
Yeah, yeah,
good,
yeah, yeah,
man.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, he's this happens like two times also in this, I think, where he's like he realizes what has actually happened and he just starts laughing hysterically,
Yeah.
and you can also see him like crying beneath it. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, this is Baman Irani's, like, I know it's Sanjay that's great in it. Arshad
Yeah.
Varsi, we can't not mention, who's so good in this.
Yeah.
And I think one of the notes I made after like watching it, because I was reeling from Dunki, was this is how much you inhabit a character. I don't know if you remember,
Mm.
there's the scene where he's told to get a body for dissection.
Yeah. And he brings it in a van.
But before he brings it to the van, there's this amazing bit where he's interacting with the Chinese guest.
Oh
And
yes, yes,
it's
yes. Chinatown or whatever those.
you'd think it
Yeah.
has whatever slightly racist
Yeah,
overtones,
racist or whatever. Yeah.
but it's also
Yeah.
it's amazing where he's like, आप लोगों को यहाँ पे यही सब दिखता है ना, like in a very whatever however way
Yeah.
Arshad says कि oh, आपको real India देखना है ना, तो मैं आपको ताज, like it's such a good way of you addressing the whole what tourism in India actually amounts to sometimes for international people, and then he uses that
Yeah.
as a way to then dispose him off there. Like, just all these moments are
Literally.
so amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I can go on about all
No,
of his
I remember
movies.
I remember watching it, rewatching it during the lockdown, and
Hmm.
I was just in that mood where I wanted to feel nostalgic about the kind of films that I had grown up watching.
Yeah.
And I just tuned into Munnabhai M.B.B.S just one
Hmm.
random evening, and I was floored,
Yeah.
realizing how well it functions on an emotional level, continues to function well on an emotional level,
Hmm.
and even the recurring motifs, and again uh, the way
There's
you
a
just mentioned, the way
lot
he,
of Three Idiots styled. There's a very big
yeah, yeah,
overlap
a
because
lot of
there's
those, and a lot
engineering
of those
institution there. He has
card
medical
shots.
institution there.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
he's always been, again, this is what brings me back to Dunky for a bit, that he's always had this sly way of, setting up institutions in a way that the framing device in itself mocks the stupidness and
Yep.
the ridiculousness of these institutions, right?
Hmm.
So the framing device in itself, he sets it up in such a way
Yeah.
that he doesn't that's why the humor that stems out of that always feels organic,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
right?
I mean, there's that lovely scene in the beginning where Munna is goes to the lecture hall first time, and he's like notices who's giving the lecture, and he's just
Yeah.
like sleeps, whatever, goes in a sleeping position. But then at the same time, Asthana is basically being super serious, like Virus actually in
Hmm.
Three
Yeah.
Idiots, where he's like,
Hmm.
you need to stop, you need to be cold, essentially cold, clinical, and
Yeah.
उसमें हाथ का some example he gives essentially
Yeah.
कि
Yeah.
हाथ हिलना नहीं चाहिए while you're
Hmm.
operating someone or whatever, and then like that's a proper serious moment, and then he's like he has a very stern tone, and then it's broken up so
Hmm.
well where Munna is like,
Yeah.
हाथ रखे, आई थिंक he asked that वो कोई मेडिकल डिपार्टमेंट में पढ़ा हुआ है, उसको फॉर्म भरने की जरूरत है या नहीं, like something like that. Like, you know, it's a
Yeah,
great way of critiquing your bureaucracy and all that in a way which is very
exactly. Yeah,
organic to the plot. And I think that sort of, and
exactly.
then
Yeah.
ragging is mentioned amazingly well and like
Hmm.
diffused in
Hmm.
this also very well. So again, Three Idiots, lots of overlapping elements actually here.
Yeah.
um but I mean, there are well, if you want to draw the sexual allegation bit and extend it,
Hmm.
you can
Yeah.
talk about this being a fairly
Sure.
misogynist film.
Let's ruin it.
No, 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 no.
Yeah.
But it is no, this time without even the sexual allegation, but there is a little bit of not a
Yeah.
little bit. There's quite a bit of it, which it
Hmm.
isn't in the other films. So I think this is whatever it's
Hmm.
in. See, it's the whole. Some parties sort of get, if you are taking a broad approach, there is a
Hmm.
possibility that some parties will get the shorter end of the stick, and here that is definitely the case. But
Hmm.
do you remember Anand Bhai in this?
The one, basically Jimmy Shegel's character,
No,
right?
no, no, that's Zahir.
Oh, okay, okay.
Anand Bhai is the
Anand is the
wheelchair.
peon.
Wheelchair.
Oh, of course, of course, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's that's the sort of emotional heart I feel at, like, whatever.
Crux of
And
the film.
Zahir
Yeah.
also. Zahir actually is the great.
Zahir, I think, is the
Zahir
emotional
is
heart of it.
the, and I think this is the one thing
I
which I
think
think.
the
Hmm.
wheelchair guy,
Hmm.
again, what's his name?
Anand Bhai, I think, in the film. I don't
Anand
know the
Bhai.
actor.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think Anand Bhai acts, from what I remember, Anand Bhai acts like a continuous reminder
Hmm.
of what this kind of bureaucracy and what it
Hmm.
has been, sidelining and
Yes.
not really paying attention to, which is obviously the same with Jimmy Shegel's character,
Yeah.
because it's again, that's where the entire thing comes in, that you have to be you almost have to be immoral and you almost have to be the stoic to function in
Oh,
this
coldness.
environment,
I
which
think
is
it's
true
yeah. It's the
to a certain extent, but then
science's coldness versus art,
yeah,
and I think it's
exactly.
slightly performance, because a lot of times, and he says ki मैं like when he basically breaks down Munna later
Yeah,
at the end is like
yeah.
मैं सिर्फ वो हंसता हूँ रुलाता हूँ जो भी है,
Hmm.
like it's almost like a performer rather than anything else,
Yeah.
like the emotional angle of it. So like he's pitting
Hmm.
those two against each other, I feel, more than anything else.
I think it
Uh,
is. I think at the end of the day, if you were to look at a film and if you were to summarize it thematically, it is basically science and pragmatism
yeah,
clashing against
yeah,
artistic spirit
yeah,
and humanity, I guess.
yeah,
Humanism, basically.
yeah.
Right?
Humanism, yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
And I think very much. I mean, I guess
Again,
this
I
is the.
think again
Hmm,
it is this is why at least this film and a lot of Hirani's films never come across as condescending, because at the heart of it, they are as simple as this, right? Pragmatism versus
and they're
humanism.
sincere, no?
But
They believe
they are
in.
extremely sincere
Yeah.
because they know what they are functioning on. It's from a first principles basis.
Hmm,
It is as simple as that.
hmm,
But because it has those foundations intact, it
hmm.
knows its approach and then it can build upon those
Yeah,
layers.
yeah.
Right? That's when mocking the institutions, clashing this kind of antagonist with the protagonist. That's when those angles come in
Hmm.
organically. Again, I keep
Yep.
using this word organically because the movie gave us one of the best freaking duos in Bollywood. I think
Yep.
in the entirety of Hindi cinema, Indian cinema, with
Hmm.
Circuit and Munna, basically, right?
Yeah, and which I think should I well, this is my transition, which I'm like which Lagero Munnabhai actually expands upon quite a bit. Like I think
Yeah,
in Munnabhai M.B.B.S circuit is very much, a
like a side.
supporting
Yeah,
character, like a sidekick. Yeah.
yeah.
In this, he's like a proper, he has a proper, they have a really tremendous scene,
Oh
emotional
my
scene at
god.
the,
Oh
which
my
is the
god.
interval block of the film essentially. Uh,
Fantastic. It's
yeah.
and it's oh my god, look at Munna Bhai.
Yeah.
Oh
So I
god,
think,
yes.
yeah, so Lage Munna Bhai, I think is my favorite from whatever I have rewatched in
Yeah.
that order. Uh, Simply for the reason, I think, because it to me makes a lot of the M.B.B.S issues I had with the flow like natural. Like I think it flows much better. Uh, And
Also because he uses montages in a very, very good way over here.
yes,
Like I
oh,
remember,
yeah,
I would never forget that entire montage about that geriatric, the basically the
Gandhigiri when he's
pensioner.
doing.
No, no,
Yes,
no.
yes, yes,
Basically,
yes,
when
yes,
that
yes.
old man
Pension.
goes and yeah,
Yes,
he
yeah,
goes to receive his pension in the bank and he
yeah.
starts taking his clothes off
Clothes
or
off.
he gives his watch
Yeah,
and the way that is played and
yeah,
it
yeah.
leads to a montage. Oh my God.
Hmm.
It
No, no, it
is,
was
and I remember
fantastic.
this despite having watched it like 2, 3 years back now, 3 years
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's phenomenal in that way.
yeah.
The way
No,
it flows.
so just to mention, it's co-written by Abhijat Joshi. So this is the first time they are
Hmm.
combining
Okay.
together to and they've basically written everything together after this, uh, good and bad. So both
Except
of them are
Sanju,
on.
or was he?
No, 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 everything together. And one thing I forgot to mention, and this is a big, big issue in terms of filmmaking, those
Okay.
reaction shots in Munnabhai
Hmm.
M.B.B.S are bad. Sorry. Like, and those
Okay.
are much improved in Lage Munnabhai because he gives them to circuit a lot of times and to,
Hmm.
and glycerine ka use bhi thoda kam hai, which in
Okay.
M.B.B.S is like to another level. I was like, okay, you need to calm down a little bit on that. But yeah,
Hmm.
I missed one point in M.B.B.S and I'll bring it back in Lage Raho. Both these films actually, when we are talking about the science versus art, and in this is it's basically Gandhi versus, actually it's not even, I won't even say it's Gandhi versus whatever Bhai Giri.
Hmm.
I have written it as sort of, the absurd real that's fake
Hmm.
versus the transparent unreal that's actually real. So which is like
Hmm.
essentially what fakeness people put in front on the surface as opposed to
Yeah.
the actual
In the name of
real,
idealism,
in the name
basically.
of idealism. Yeah, it's the whole,
Hmm.
I think very much if you sum it ki um, putla khada karna or dil mein rakhna type
Hmm.
of wo ideology, it's that
Yeah.
at play.
Which in
So
itself is basically Gandhian ideology versus how you implement it,
yeah,
how you
yeah.
go about it
Go about,
in your
yeah, very
conscience.
surface level, you limit it
Yeah.
to the surface and don't sort of look
Hmm.
beyond that idea of it. But yeah, I was saying that one
Hmm.
of the things, and this might be because, and it benefits from Sanjay Dutt not being a superstar at that time, uh
Yeah.
is its ability to make its heroes more human. When we are
Hmm.
talking about ideals, because a lot of his films are about ideals versus, between two
Hmm.
ideals. In Munna Bhai M.B.B.S, Munna is not God, which is a big thing. Because Zahir thinks
Yeah.
he is God and he can cure
Hmm.
everything. And then the film kind
Hmm.
of pushes him back. And it's like almost,
Robs that
yeah,
authority out of him.
he's not
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
powerful. So I think
Yeah.
that's a big thing. And in Lage Rao Munna Bhai also, I think one of the things why I like it this much is I think because the Gundagiri and Gandhigiri have a very Gandhiism or Gandhian
Hmm.
principles are amalgamated in a way
Hmm.
which are very fascinating to me. Like they're not
Hmm.
mutually exclusive sometimes. It's not like one
Exactly.
has
Yeah.
been transformed into the other. Because I don't think in the film's world, Gandhian principles can exist in
Yeah.
isolation to Gundagiri. Like a lot of the solutions in the film are actually a combination
By
of
the
the
end.
two. Yeah, yeah, by the end, because that's the way
Hmm.
you have to coax people into, revealing their
Hmm.
whatever bad side. So I think
Hmm.
yeah, so I mean, for people who aren't familiar with the film, we've already kind of discussed a little bit of it. So it's essentially a quote unquote sequel, not a proper sequel. So it's like just following the
Hmm.
same set of characters rather than it's a totally different
Hmm.
story. And it has a lot of similar beats to M.B.B.S.
Hmm.
In terms of its construction. So it's very much Sanjay Dutt and Arshad Varsi pitted against Bowman and Rani in the bigger sense of the word. And it's
Hmm.
him trying to win over his love
Hmm.
by being a history professor, essentially to, get into a radio show, which is a lovely scene in the beginning. And after that, basically him being entangled, again, very melodramatic way. It's like the apartment that Lucky has told him to empty out is the
Hmm.
apartment of the person he loves, and and then
Yeah.
or whatever ensues from there. So I think
Again, similar framing device. Yeah.
very similar.
Yeah.
not different. And same thing where, Munna in that film does a bunch of stuff which basically makes the hospital staff his quote unquote cult, to be
Hmm.
cynical. But in this, it's also similar that the Gandhigiri spreads through the power of
Yeah.
radio, which is again, I think there's a
Hmm.
whole thing of art being a good, a thing of
Hmm.
good in his films. Maybe it was because he was told to be an engineer and he didn't want to
Hmm.
be what, who knows. Uh,
Yeah.
but uh, but yeah, like that aspect is there. But yeah, you do any memories of the film? I know you watched it a long time back. That's why I've
I
been speaking
rewatched
a
it.
lot.
So I rewatched it in the lockdown.
Hmm.
And again, whatever you just mentioned, that at the end of the day, eventually, when the confrontations do happen in the movie, it's actually both the Gandhian uh,
Ideals and
views and
yeah,
ideas, as well as the Gundagiri part
yes,
of Munna that he had always carried. It's
yeah,
an amalgamation or a certain byproduct of those two things that
mm,
comes to the rescue in bringing out those cathartic resolutions from
yeah.
the characters,
I mean,
right?
the film doesn't
And again,
acknowledge it, but it is there. Like, I mean, the
exactly,
film
yeah,
kind of is like, film is like film as in like it is there in the film, but the film chooses to
yeah,
highlight that it's
mm,
Gandhi. Giri is like, Gandhi
yeah,
becomes Gundagiri, sort of like that, which is fine,
yeah.
but the
No,
tension is there.
again, it comes back to the same thing of using dichotomies in a very refreshing way, where it starts off with being a certain thing, and by the end you realize, oh, okay, you almost tricked me for a moment because
Hmm.
you just had me with how you would go on about the entire Gandhian point of view that the film kind of preaches through its half of the runtime. And
Hmm.
again, the thing that struck the most to me when I watched it during the lockdown was also, of course, this sentiment that I was carrying, that obviously during the lockdown, India
Yeah, yeah.
sociopolitically was going through a lot. Okay.
Hmm.
And that's when the fundamental rupture of all these institutions that were basically in part laid out of the Gandhian
Hmm.
idealistic, the trust that he had enshrined in
Hmm.
individualism that led the rise of those powerful institutions. Those
Hmm.
were all being dismantled while we were
Hmm.
in our homes,
Hmm.
basically locked,
Yep.
asked to
Hmm.
be locked in our homes.
Hmm.
And watching it during that time, and uh, again, it wasn't just preachy about uh, the Gandhian ideals, but it was also to a certain extent showing how a certain kind of ideology can seed so much into your mind where you can
Hmm.
start projecting it literally
Yeah,
in
yeah,
your life in front of you. And
yeah.
that's what brings me to one of the most devastating, emotionally devastating confrontations I've seen in Hindi cinema,
Hmm.
which leads to him realizing during the interval block where, oh, circuit, my best
Yeah.
friend was just faking it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? That
Hmm.
he wasn't seeing Gandhi the way I was.
Hmm.
That, oh my God, am I crazy? Like,
Hmm.
am I not this person I have led myself to believe? And
Hmm.
that, I mean, this is what intervals were made
Hmm.
for in Hindi cinema. I
Yeah.
mean, they were not made for this,
Yeah,
but
yeah, no,
in
but it's a
terms of
great
pure
interval block.
storytelling,
Hmm.
in terms of pure storytelling, you completely bring your protagonist down. You
Yeah.
constantly pound him in the dust, in the ground.
Hmm.
Okay. And this interval point, oh my
Hmm.
God.
No,
And
no,
the
it's
way it
phenomenal.
builds,
Performed
the
also.
way
It's
it
performed
built from
phenomenally.
that. Again,
Yeah.
and again, the same recurring motive of they hang out during that ghat, right? If I'm
Yes.
not wrong.
There's a similarity.
What's it called? Dhobi ghat kind of a thing.
Dhobi Ghat. Yeah, yeah, it's a Dhobi Ghat only. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember those basically what do you call those shots? Those peculiar shots that he's known for using.
Reaction shots.
The
No.
no.
Oh,
That
Dutch
angles,
angles.
but
Oh,
Dutch
yeah.
angles,
Oh, my
yeah.
God, Lord.
Yeah, I
Yes.
remember those establishing
Does-
shots, and every time we get their scenes together, it's like those little recurring motives help you read more nuance and more
Mhm.
liveliness
Yeah.
into their dynamic, basically, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's what
Yeah.
keeps the film going, apart from the brilliant dialogue and
Yeah.
the writing. And yeah, it's basically how your ideas, your ideology, which you think has uh,
Hmm.
is the ideal, is the norm. It's when it fundamentally starts turning against you,
Yeah.
and that's when you feel that you are at the mercy of everything. You are being constantly subjugated by people, every
Hmm.
person around you. That you're
Hmm.
constantly paranoid, you're constantly in this state of, and again,
Hmm.
of course, I can totally see this kind of film being made today and people be going that, oh, this is not the pure take on mental health. This is not how it looks like. I mean, I can, like, I
Yes,
so
yes.
close to swearing right
Yeah,
now,
yeah, it's
but
okay.
like,
But this is
please
the
get
whole.
a job.
No, but I
Yeah,
think one of the things which I think even I was thinking, what all criticisms
yeah,
can be lodged against the film now if you look at it from a different
yeah,
point of view. And I was like,
mm,
even the criticism that, this is endorsing Gandhian, this is being like a total encompassment of everything Gandhi's kind of rendered mood by the film because he is a projection of what Munna has read. It's not that
exactly,
he's
exactly.
everything.
Yeah,
He's whatever,
he
he has
has read
read.
about it.
So again,
Mm.
the broadness is sort of even justified by the film in the sense that,
By the
these are
framework
the
itself.
yeah, these are the things that, he's known for. So like known for isn't known for Munna, like in the broadest way
Yeah.
possible. And I think
Mm.
my so again returning to Irani, which is all this is also the reason why I hated how bad he was in Dunki. Thought he was so
Yeah.
underused and so much of a nothing character. But
It was a caricature, na,
yeah,
basically.
proper caricature, huh? Without any sort of
I love that
thing to
one
him.
one shot where he's just like, when all the phones start drinking and whatever
He picks up the wrong
body,
one. Ha,
yeah, yeah,
yes,
whatever he does with
that's
his body mannerisms, I
yes,
think
yes,
he's just a
yeah.
phenomenal performer. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, but इसमें Lucky Singh is the antagonist in some senses. There's a eviler antagonist who will refeature in PK because there's a lot of PK allusions in this film actually about superstitions and people not
Yeah.
believing what people are saying. But
Hmm.
anyways, the Lucky character in this, I think, one of the best uses of setups and payoffs in this film, and the way it
Hmm.
pays is him being introduced essentially, and he does this a number of times in the film where he poses
Hmm.
to take photos with celebrities, you know, which are
Oh,
on the
yes, yes, yes.
surface, quote unquote, real. And
Yeah.
the film ends with him taking a photo with Gandhi, who's
Hmm.
invisible to us. So I
Yeah.
think like
Yeah.
that, like his whole transformation from that to that, I think was phenomenal. I was like,
Hmm.
that's such a great way of, make essentially
Hmm.
they've turned a comic uh, quirk into a major
Hmm.
plot point. Not a plot
Hmm.
point,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
just a
Hmm.
great arc building thing where
Yeah.
it sort of fits amazingly well with everything. And I have to say, I laugh every time he reacts to seeing flowers being sent to him.
Oh
And
God, yes, yes,
he
yes.
is hilarious. And the funniest is where where he's in the shop and he sees a
Yeah.
lady wearing like a gajra and he just like
Oh.
erupts into anger and like she's just touching the gajra
Flexing it.
yeah and he's like absolutely goes and like goes mad on her. I was like this is hilarious. But yeah, no, the Arshad, what you were saying about the interval block, the that scene is so brilliantly performed by
Yeah.
both actors.
And
Especially, I think.
even the cinematography and the staging of it, right?
I mean, I am a
It is
little
so,
less.
it has that dreamy,
I am a little
melancholic
less
quality to it.
crazy about the Dutch. I think he's a bit too overboard in the Munnabhai films. I was like, I didn't notice that
Yeah.
every shot almost is like, I was like,
Okay.
camera सीधा भी रख सकते हो sir, like that way. But I'll mention slightly.
Hmm.
I actually really like the love story here. I
Yeah.
liked it in Munna by M.B.B.S also, but I like it more here. I think it's more fluidly. It's the core, na. It's built as the sort
Hmm.
of main instigator of what thing
Yeah.
makes him go to the radio show and like become a Gandhi professor. But there are lovely
And
moments.
again, I think, I mean, I, I wish Sanjeet were here to
Hmm.
make those faces while I see this. But again, to bring the socio-political context over here. I think it is really the see. I genuinely think this film did great, as you said earlier before we started. It had like almost universal like critical acclaim, right?
Mm. Yeah.
The discourse that it received at the time, the way it was
Hmm.
received both by the audience and critics.
Yeah.
I think it really struck a chord because it kind of reframed a lot of the Gandhian views
Hmm.
and ideology, and it kind of posed it against these institutions almost as if it were putting it to a check. And
Yeah.
it came out during a time where the government, the UPA government, basically, there were a lot of scams that were coming out in the public.
Mm.
There was a fundamental disbelief and a distrust that
Hmm.
there was growing in the
Hmm.
populace against the
Yeah.
government because of all the corruption charges that had come out. And
Mm.
I think the film really, really spoke to that, and again, it's a brilliant way. And again, it is symbolized over here through radio, which is a means of
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
propagating ideas, powerful ideas, instilling moral awakening into the
Yeah.
populace, and making them
Being
realize that this is the
generous
ideology.
and
Yeah,
being
and this is
generous,
the
which is
this is
the
that the
like I
foundations our country was found upon. Like,
yeah, and I
please,
mean, I know for
yeah,
all the broadness and everything, if a broad
yeah,
film is preaching to you about basic human kindness in a way which
yeah,
is this sincere, and I mean, I
yeah.
realized this how much I'm a sucker for this actually yesterday when I watched Wonka by Paul King. I was
Okay,
like,
yeah,
I'll buy this, I'll buy your sweet whatever saccharine stuff if you're sincere enough to go
exactly.
commit to your
Committed to
convictions.
your word.
Yeah, because there's one
Hmm.
moment in this where I mean I teared up a little bit, but like I was just like Munna at the wedding towards the end is basically like kuch bolo na tum log, like people who are standing at the wedding essentially who are like
Oh,
all
yes,
this
yes, yes, yes.
like इतना intelligent
सब
होने के
देख रहे हो
बाद
लेकिन कुछ
हाँ
बोल
हाँ
क्यों नहीं रहे
कुछ
हो?
बोल
हाँ.
नहीं रहे हो and then he's
Hmm.
basically like
Again, it is basically that's what it is. It
yeah yeah
is
yeah
like an awakening to the
yeah.
populace, right?
Yeah, and then he's basically, and
Both
again, it's
social and
done very well in terms of the context of the
yeah.
film. Like it's laid
And
inside the
it's done in a
context.
wedding. It's done in a social context that
Yes.
is very relatable.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. It's
Yeah.
brilliant.
And then he's basically like, नहीं रहना मुझे इन समझदार लोगों के साथ, essentially,
Yeah.
which is like
Hmm.
very, this is the whole thing that sort of made me think about the fake and real ka, the unreal,
Hmm.
real and whatever that nonsense is. But yeah, there's a lot of Vidya Balan. I'm a big Vidya Balan fan. I'm a big Vidya Balan smile and laugh fan, especially because I think my day becomes
And
better
Good
when I see
Morning Mumbai fan.
Good Morning Mumbai fan, definitely.
Yeah.
But there are some lovely moments in Pal Pal Pal, the
Hmm.
song, which I think is
Yeah.
one of like for anyone who thinks Hirani is a bad director, I think that
Hmm.
song I always put forth as I can't see a bad director, putting that song together. Or it's just
Yeah.
edited really well. He's an
Yeah.
editor, right? So uh, it's a really beautiful song in terms of how it communicates its ideas, underlines the things that's already been established and everything. And all the oldies are quite nice in this. Like it doesn't like
Hmm.
the oldies subplots are nice and whatever
Hmm.
they're not super elaborated upon except for one or two of them. But yeah,
Hmm.
and Abhishek Bachchan, I think I remember this was the time of Abhishek Bachchan cameos. I remember him doing
Yeah.
two, three more cameos and some other thing. But a lot of other good recurring characters from Munnabhai M.B.B.S. and recurring actors from Munnabhai
Actors
M.B.B.S.
playing different
Jimmy
characters. Yeah.
Shergill, and again a very
Yeah.
emotionally heartbreaking scene with his father where he has to
Hmm.
essentially reveal to him that he's been lost his money and
Hmm.
you know and last point, and we'll move to Three Idiots, which I know Aryan will be gushing about throughout. So one of the great points I think I was thinking about was like what sort of moves me essentially is how we talk about how he's taking this broad appeal and it's fairly playing to all sort of demographics, but there's this instance
Hmm.
when Victor is talking to his dad, which is the Jimmy
Hmm.
Shergill character, and he basically has already told him that I've
Hmm.
lost the money, but I'll make sure that I'll gain it back. That is the generic moment. The line
Hmm.
after that, I always remember where he's like, आपको बुरा तो नहीं
Hmm.
लगेगा कि मैं यहाँ पे आपके फ्रेंड की कैब चला के, that is the sort of thing where I'm like, that just makes it all the more specific for me. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, that is the sort of thing that I get sold by very easily.
Hmm.
I'm like, उतना उतना specific चाहिए बस, और कुछ नहीं चाहिए मुझे. So yeah. So that
No, no,
is.
it's a great film, and I'll always be thankful to my parents who took me to watch this movie on its opening weekend in 2006. And yes, this brings me to Three Idiots, a film that I had read the novel that it was based upon.
So you've
And
read it?
obviously, I was in that, yeah, I was in that phase where I was just getting into fiction
Yeah.
and was kind of being that pretentious asshole around college who was going around needing Chetan Bhagat. I don't know why I was feeling very proud of that, but anyways, and I also was very skeptical about the movie, especially considering the trailers that the kind of marketing it was basically
What was the marketing?
putting
Remind me.
forward.
I'm not.
It had those songs, the
Zubidubi.
Kareena Kapoor, and it had those songs, and I was like, oh my god,
No, no.
what are they doing to this?
Zubidubi is one of the few songs which I'm like cold, very cold. It's very well filmed though. I was
Yeah,
noticing this
yeah,
again.
it's
Yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
as a old school Bollywood
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, the trailers had that in abundance, and I was
Oh
like,
yeah.
okay, I don't think I would be in tune with this movie. And I
Hmm.
remember like not being very. I have vivid memories of discussing it a day before we were going to watch it. My
Hmm.
parents and I was sitting in the car back seat, and I was like, it's fine. We are going for a Saturday morning show.
Yeah.
The reviews have been good, but it's a mainstream Bollywood film, and it was during that time where my my skepticism over Bollywood had just started.
Hmm.
Those
सबका होता
doubts
है
were
sir.
already
Yes.
popping up,
Yes.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh, let's see. And yeah, the next morning, the 9 a.m. show, after the 9 a.m. show, I was bawling my eyes out. And it may have been the most emotionally enriching experience of my life up
Hmm.
until that point,
Hmm.
which is not saying a lot because I was like basically what, 8 or 10, but whatever.
You were eight
And
or ten when you
yeah,
watched Three Idiots and you were bawling.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
something. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And no, not 8 or 10. Huh, might have been 10, yeah.
10. Hmm.
And I I love I absolutely love Three Idiots, and
Hmm.
to such an extent that quite honestly, right before Dunki was supposed to release, I was just going through his filmography and
Hmm.
letterbox, and I was just rating them, okay, just to make sure that it shows like 100% ball strength, whatever. And I was just going through his filmography, logging his films in my diary, and that's the first time when I realized that, oh, there are people out there who don't like Three Idiots.
There are
Because
people out there who
honestly,
really don't like it. Not don't like it,
and
really
honestly,
like it.
Dhruv, like, not only when this film came out in 2009, right?
Yeah.
But even after that, for a lot of years, I genuinely did not come across a single person
I've also not come across.
who was cold on this film.
I've not
I
come
mean,
across
it was the
anyone
kind of,
until Letterboxd and whatever. I got to know
yeah.
Amartya and Varun, unfortunately.
Basically, when
Uh,
you let's talk. But no, 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 I get it. I get it. But the
yeah.
thing is that it's that kind of movie where
Hmm.
even like people talk about how Barbenheimer, brought even the
Yeah.
non cinema goers
Hmm.
into this phenomenon where
Hmm.
everyone watched it. Three Idiots was that back in 2009.
Yeah.
Everyone watched it. Like people you knew who would only go to the theater
Hmm.
once or barely twice a year would
Yeah.
go watch Three Idiots like three, four, five times,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? In
I
its
watched it,
first
I
week.
think two, three times, and I think I'm disappointed that I just watched it that less. But
And
I
again,
always.
this is a
Hmm.
brings me to this point, okay? And
Hmm.
again, I don't have much to say about this film because I think it's extraordinary. I think
Hmm.
it may be my favorite Hirani film right there with
Hmm.
Munnabhai, I would say.
Hmm.
But I would just say that I've been so it was recently leading
Hmm.
up to 12th Fail's release. It was
Hmm.
re-released across theaters in India. Okay,
Hmm.
I did want to go watch it, but I was scared because, as you said before recording this podcast,
Hmm.
that you kind of fear, diluting the uh, awe that these kind of films
Yeah.
leave you in your conditioning years, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to. It's almost like you're too afraid and insecure to, let that experience be clouded by these new
Yeah, yeah,
sort of
by
sensitivities that you kind
educated
of have.
cinephilia.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't want to rewatch that movie because the memory of it, watching it
I will
multiple times in itself
guarantee
was
you it's a very good movie.
yeah,
Please don't believe
yeah.
the other people. It's really well made for the
Yeah.
most part.
It is.
Yeah, I think there are. So this time, the weird thing for me was that I remember, as you remembered, this is the first time I remember I was laughing one moment and then crying the next.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I didn't, I also remember that I was not the only person doing it. My dad
Yeah.
sat right next to me was doing it. So, my
Yeah.
memory for it is that very
Same
much.
here.
So the only slight disappointment on my end was that I was not crying in this watch,
Okay.
which I
Okay.
I actually sobbed in M.B.B.S, Lage Raho, and
Hmm.
PK. So I am
Oh,
surprised
okay.
that in Three Idiots I didn't really sob in any moment. There are some moments where it's the gulping,
Hmm.
whatever, like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
think like you're almost gonna cry, and
Hmm.
it's a hilarious movie. I think more
Yeah.
like throughout and out. I think it's really really
Hmm.
funny. I think the setup, and I messaged you saying setup and payoff machine this movie is in the best way
Yeah.
possible. Even the scene
Yeah.
I consistently begrudge, which is the vacuum cleaning uh, delivery scene, essentially, which I think
Yeah.
I still think it's a very extra scene and needed to be put there because you need to have a climax to that flashback
Hmm.
portion. Uh,
Hmm.
it is set up really well with all is well in the moment
Hmm.
when he goes to propose to Pia, which is Kareena Kapoor's character. Then there is
Hmm.
virus generator, which also comes back into that scene, which I forgot that was a setup also for for since the longest time. And then other payoffs and that I've noted is chutney at the wedding. That happens twice. Really with Suhas, who's
Yeah.
quote unquote a gatha, like a really funny gatha.
Yeah.
And Jahan Pana Tusi Great Ho, Tofu, Tofa, whatever you want to call it, Kabul Karo,
Yeah.
is repeated multiple times. But that's the one time I almost teared up, is when Farhan and Raju, who is Madhavan and Sharman Joshi, do that variation to,
In the end.
salute this. No, no, not in the end.
Yeah.
To salute Amir Khan when one of the fathers
Yeah.
agrees to be for him to be a wildlife
Yeah.
photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. Yes. Hmm.
So that I remembered, and then Virus Ki Pen, that's the other one, which shows
Or
up a lot
tie.
of times. Ah, ha, ha, ha. Yes, or tie. Yes,
Oh,
yes.
that the pen. It is like, oh my God, it is so simple in its
Yeah.
uh framing device, and yet the way it's perfect setup payoff.
And it's a
It's
great,
so
and then in the end, it's a great comic setup and
yeah,
payoff because he
exactly.
shows it to what's that guy's face? Omi Vaidya, who basically didn't do anything after
Yeah.
this movie because everyone thought he could
Okay.
only do one role, right? Which is
Yeah.
Chatur.
Chatur.
Uh,
Yeah.
and one thing I'll flag this up, because I think Varun had said, which I understand his criticism on this. I just don't think it's as detrimental to the film. Is how much uh, Rancho quote unquote bullies Chatur essentially,
Mm.
which is there. I understand, but I also think Chatur is an ideal here for the Ratta system.
Punching bag. Yeah.
No, he's
Mm.
the Ratta system guy, right? Like he's the person who
Yeah.
gets all
He's
that.
the punching bag of that
Yeah,
entire. He is basically
but
the embodiment there.
I also don't think the film then says that this person is always wrong considering he's earning his millions
Exactly.
and whatever he is. So like it's not like the
Yeah.
system is not
He is the one
working.
who eventually takes them to find Rancho,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. It's not like the system is not working. It's just that he wants to be apart
It
from
is
the
the
system.
system that's giving people like those out, that is turning
Yep. Either
Ratta
that
Manus out, right? Basically.
or the suicide. There's a lot of
Oh
suicide
my
in
God.
this.
Yeah.
Like just
Yeah.
the idea of suicide hangs over this film a lot. Like
Yes.
I
Yeah.
forgot that. I mean, I remembered the Ali Fazal one because again,
Yeah.
it's a great emotional gut punch of a scene because it happens straight after All Is Well.
Exactly.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And
then
it's literally like taking you,
it
uh,
goes up and he's basically
yeah,
using the camera. It
close up
goes up
and bringing you
and
down.
then it totally like
Yeah.
crashes down.
Yeah.
So I think that I remembered, but I forgot that there's the whole thing with Virus's son who is deceased, and
Hmm.
that's brought up a couple of times also.
Yeah.
And then there's Sharman Joshi who commits it at one point
Hmm.
in time.
Yeah.
So I think like I always feel, with even not just Three Idiots, with all these films, I feel Hirani's films are actually really upset at how the world is,
Hmm.
and
Yeah. Of course.
like upset in the sense that they are pretty like dark, even like bringing up
Hmm.
suicide this much, and it's not a. I don't
Hmm.
think it brings it up cheaply, at all.
Exactly.
In
Yeah.
Three
Yeah. Yeah.
Idiots,
No. No. No.
there
It
is
shows the consequences of
yeah,
what you
there is
did.
one thing I know PK brings up, which I think is very cheap emotional manipulation, which I will get to. But in
Hmm.
this, I don't think there's like a cheap bringing up of that as, a conflict marker or anything as such.
Yeah.
And yeah, the one criticism I have, I don't think it's minor, but I feel you can very much, as you said at the beginning, compare it with Dunki.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
Amir Khan aura or awe for that superstar is
Hmm.
slightly too much in this, I think. Whereas
Hmm.
which what I was saying about Munnabhais, where the idealism ka battle mein the hero felt more human because he always gets pushed down. In this, Amir Khan is quote unquote God. Like I don't think
Hmm.
there's a single thing he does wrong. There is one thing he does wrong.
Hmm.
He takes the
Hmm. Hmm.
question paper out for
Yeah.
Sharman Joshi's character, and Sharman Joshi is like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? You've taught me to live in one way, and then you're doing this. That's the
Hmm.
one moment. But apart from
Hmm.
that, he's very, very, scot free, and like he's totally correct, and like wo
Hmm.
thoda zyada he becomes the ideal, whereas the
Hmm.
other characters are human. And
Hmm.
but yeah, that is my only sort of qualm with the film. But that is not
Hmm.
so much a qualm because I do think everything is working on like just firing on all cylinders. Um,
I think it shows that character in that light because it's also putting a certain kind of ideal in front of us through that character, which we all realize it's not attainable,
of
right?
course, yeah.
No one would be that
That's why he's also
altruistic
heightened. No, in
and
some,
selfless.
he's also like a
Yeah,
genius, I suppose. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. And
yeah,
I think it's just trying to through its narrative and through its storytelling, it's just pitching that kind of idealism to thrive for, but we know that it's not attainable, even though it's something that we should all
yeah,
thrive to achieve in
yeah.
this broken system. So I think
Yeah.
that's why it works because of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so you mentioned I was thinking of so many gags involving him
Yeah.
taking the mick out of so many people in the college. I mean, of course, there's the balatkar, stun, etc. Which
Hmm.
I'm sorry for whoever thinks that scene is offensive, but it is bloody funny still.
Yeah.
And then there is the whole when he replies to the professor who,
Hmm.
आपको सीधा सीधा अच्छा नहीं लगता, so whatever. I was like, that is like that sort of rebuttal is fantastic. Then the whole virus ka
Yeah.
thing, Farhan nitrate and pre-Rajulization, like all that
Again,
stuff is.
like
Hmm.
if you're doing didactism like that, then please go on.
Please go. Absolutely, like it's hilarious,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think the Ladakh section is really fun and funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when they meet Chatur and how that sort of wraps up. I
Again,
think
don't you
really,
think this movie has a proper three-act structure? I
yeah.
think even in terms of writing, it is pretty great.
No, no, it is really good. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
that's the other thing. Like that's why I said the only one scene that I feel is extra, and I feel like they
Hmm.
had to put because they needed to, like, to build to some
Hmm.
conclusion, high stakes conclusion, for that scene, for that sort of flashback portion is the vacuum cleaning wala, but it's fine.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
now have enough stuff in there that I don't mind, that I can even
Yeah.
live with that.
And even
But
that, even the scene with Javed Jaffri's character where he's like कि हम लोग फ्लश कर देंगे दादी को
पापा को उठा
गंगा 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 में नहीं गटर में
गटर में
डालेंगे. So
जाएंगे.
and then seeing that it's the empty,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they got the wrong
But
lota.
उसमें भी
It's
but the great thing is about these scenes, I think, is also that there's these
hmm,
punchlines that come from like really secondary, third, like tertiary characters. Like in the like
hmm,
when he finds out कि नहीं है उसमें,
yeah,
his father is not there in that lota
yeah.
essentially. The person, his helper is like
खाली है, खाली है.
helper is like अरे भाई साहब तो इस लोटे में or whatever like the scene ends with the
The
third
way
or
he
fourth
throws it.
character. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean,
yeah.
you get
So
all
good.
these
Yeah.
amazing sort of bits and pieces, and again,
And
Boman
there's
Irani
obviously
virus, fantastic.
Woman Hirani is
Yeah,
great in this.
yeah.
Yeah. And again, that obviously there are like those logical fallacies that you take along the journey. But something that I didn't realize, which is so stupid, because when they go visit Jaffrey's character, they are having this entire conversation where he's giving him the entire backstory and all.
Mm-hmm.
They're going into another flashback basically from his
Mm-hmm.
POV, and yet they leave his house without asking them, ki, where is he then? Why did he do it? So it's like it's all saving that bit up
Yeah.
for the end
And
and last act's resolution. So there is that. But again, the fact that I didn't realize this up until the 10th time I rewatched it is because the journey in itself, it is so enthralling, right?
yeah,
It
yeah,
is so invested. It just takes you, and
yeah.
it's very well paced also. Like it
Very well
doesn't
paced.
feel
And
long.
yeah, and I think also shout out to Shantanu Moitra's score. I actually really like, except for
Hmm.
Zubi Dooby, and I think All Is Well has become so played out that I'm just like, tired of it. But
Yeah, yeah.
I really like the secondary, third, or whatever tertiary tracks. So like Pehti Havasa is really lovely, I think, like the way it sort of
Hmm.
introduces. It reminded me of Highway, except I like it here. And Highway has I like Highway, I like to
Yeah,
listen to more so than actually watch, which is a
yeah,
different conversation, which will happen once we discuss Imtiaz Ali. But
yeah.
right now we
I
will
hope
stick to
never.
positives. We will, don't worry. But yes, we shall. Oh, last touch. Again,
Yeah,
filmmaking touches. The Dutch angles are at an all-time low in this, which I am very grateful
yeah.
about. And I actually really like how Sharman Joshi's family's portions are handled. They are very fun and very, very funny.
Literally saw a review on Letterboxd that goes that oh it is so regressive and how it's basically like poverty porn and the way it
It's poverty porn.
frames yeah,
It's a funny sequence. It's so
exactly
hilarious.
exactly.
I mean, the
Oh
offhand
God.
comment actually that got me laughing like anything this time was when when the father is essentially about to die, like at the house,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Amir Khan enters the room, and the mom is like, "अजीब देश है हमारा, पिज्जा 20 मिनट में आने की डिलीवरी है, but ambulance." Like like that offhand thing. I was like
Yeah,
laughing my ass off at that. And then, but it's followed up with him going to the hospital. Hospital
yeah.
mein Amir
Time him
Khan
up.
is like, no, and then like for a second, Sharman Joshi's like super irate at him, and he's
Speed
like,
poster now.
speed post, yes, yes.
Oh
And but
God.
then after that,
No, no, no. It's
hmm,
see again. A lot of people. Sorry to cut you off, but
yeah, no
this
issues.
is something so fundamental to creating good humor. Okay,
Yeah.
so you remember the kind of pauses that filmmakers would let roll in front of their
Hmm.
cameras,
Yes.
with Sharman Joshi saying a certain something or remarking Amir Khan's
Hmm.
character, and Amir taking a pause with the
Yeah.
camera still running, taking a pause and then getting back at him. कि
Yeah.
"ओ, तो क्या स्पीड पोस्ट चल रहा था?" It's that. I mean,
Yeah, it's
do
timing.
that,
It's
yeah.
timing. No, it's
It's the
timing. No,
timing, yeah.
but timing के लिए सर
Yeah.
एडिट भी तो आजकल एडिटिंग के लिए टाइम नहीं है तो फिर कैसे करेंगे?
I think this TikTokification of cinema has like
बर्बाद कर दिया है.
fundamentally watered down their
हाँ,
humor, at least.
हाँ,
This
हाँ.
brand of humor.
हाँ, you can't do it, no. Like, but वो stand. Oh my God, I can't even mention stand up without getting reminded of something. Never mind. Uh, we will not get lost in that trash. We will stick to. Should we move to PK, or do you want more thoughts on
No,
three
no,
idiots?
no. Go on, go on,
To
please.
PK. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is probably the only place where we have slightly differing opinions. Slightly.
Because I've only watched it twice again back when it came out 2015,
I'm
16
curious to
around.
see if you watch it and how it plays to you this time, because I think the first half ka second half, if that makes sense. So like,
Yeah.
is arguably him at his strongest, I think. In
Okay.
terms of
Hmm.
humor and hit rate of humor, is just,
Hmm.
when you follow Amir Khan through. So let me just introduce it. But PK is Abhijat Joshi and Rajkumar Hirani again, written by both of them. And it is a religious satire. Yes, those used to be things that existed in Hindi cinema.
No, 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 no.
Uh,
2014, a lot of religious satire happened, and it stayed there. So yeah,
The,
this
the
movie
funny
was
thing,
just yeah.
the funny thing is in PK, one of the things where Anushka Sharma basically is like complaining to Bamre Rani, like, आप न्यूज में क्या करना चाहते हो, like what are you trying to do, and he's like, इस देश में अगर आप रिलीजन के बारे में बात करोगे तो फिर आपको या तो हटा देंगे और whatever, and then या तो वो करेंगे या आपकी बम में त्रिशूल घुसाएंगे essentially. That is his whole thing.
Yeah,
Like the only reason he's not talking about it is essentially because
yeah,
of the consequences that have already happened to him for doing so.
yeah.
But I think the reason why something, what you were saying about the idealism, right? And
Hmm.
Rancho's idealism versus something like PK's, the one reason I
Hmm.
think it works better in terms of uh, PK being the ideal is because of how he is sort of, introduced as a literal alien. And
Exactly. Yeah. It
and
gets
I
away with
have,
that then.
yeah, and I have to say, I can't recall any other Amir Khan performance I've been this
Hmm.
involved and moved by. I
Oh,
genuinely
okay.
responded to every whatever, people might say that might be, a very showy performance or whatever, and it can be, that's fine, I
Yeah.
understand. But I totally bought his sincerity. I totally bought
Hmm.
everything, his innocence to whatever how he was responding to things. So I think that's a
Hmm.
big reason for me why PK, works even in the second half when it stumbles across the
Hmm.
finish line. I think the finish line works for me still, but it very much
Okay.
stumbles across the way onto the finish line. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, yeah, your thoughts on whatever you thought about
I
it.
really, I really don't remember a lot of it. I
Sure.
mean, I do remember parts of it, but I genuinely don't remember how it ends, to be very
Okay.
honest. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll do the major talking, I suppose, in this one.
Hmm.
In So basically, I think the first half of the film is a lot to do with him getting into the place.
Learning the
Uh,
way of life
yeah, learning the
on
way of the
Earth
world,
in
and
India.
Anushka Sharma trying to find a story that will
Yeah.
propel her career. And she has that
Hmm.
brief moment in the beginning with the Char Kadam song with Sushant Singh Rajput,
Hmm.
which is a setup for something that will happen much later in the film,
Yeah.
which I think the film, I think, forgets a little bit too much and needs a little bit more marination of it in the middle portion. Anyways,
Hmm.
that's minor quibble or whatever, because I think I still cry whenever that conclusion happens, so that's
Hmm.
my fault. But
Hmm.
yeah, a lot of the
It's
first
also
half
one of
of
his shortest, right?
films,
2 hours,
no,
30 minutes, I think.
I mean that's not
No,
short.
Lage Raho is shorter.
Lage Rao shorter, yeah,
212 or something.
yeah, Lage Rao shorter. Uh,
Hmm.
No, but I think so. The first half is a lot to do with him getting like inducted into the world and really
Hmm.
funny stuff. I mean, of course, there's the whole thing that the first thing that happens to him when he comes on Earth is he gets lutoed, which is, I think, is hilarious
Yeah.
itself. Like he gets
Something
called.
that Dunki also,
हाँ
basically
क्या?
through the national anthem.
That is
Yeah,
the
it's
only
a
scene of that
satire
film
bit.
I think is actually somewhat like
Smart, crazy smart.
smartly funny, like
Yeah,
smartly
yeah,
funny. So I
yeah.
was like, that is the only scene I was like, he's doing the
Hmm.
smart funny thing he does
Yes.
sometimes. But
Hmm.
anyways, this a lot of his story then becomes, I mean, there's the whole scene where he goes from one religion to another, which I think is
Hmm.
just amazing. Like it's like one religion tells him one thing, then he goes there and he like
Yeah.
does that. Then the same meaning for one thing is different in another place.
Yeah.
He goes that and he gets thrown out of there to another place. And then like again, he's
Hmm.
sort of again caught in the whole circus of all this. And then there is
Hmm.
bits like he learns to how he learns Bhojpuri is quite funny, which is the
Hmm.
Turkey Chokro song, which is also into the dancing car is also there quite a bit actually. I forgot there's all that in this. All that's done. And it's done really innocently and well. Like I think it's very well employed
Yeah.
in terms of how. And then there is this again stray moment. He's walking across like a like whatever bridge, and then someone has a thing of asking for. The andha person is asking for change as and he picks it up once, then he's still like rattling it. He goes ahead and
Yeah.
comes back and then picks it up again, like picks more of it again and then walks away. So all that is hilarious. Then there's this amazing stuff with the क्या बोलते हैं उसको जो which is basically I mean, I something I'm always fascinated by how much people sort of value is
Hmm.
the symbols of God, essentially, the
Yeah.
material symbols. And he's like,
Hmm.
very innocently, he takes them and then. I think there's a scene where once he says, Om, something he says, and like, something, someone drops um, like prasad essentially as a gift to him, and then he asks
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
his locket which he's looking for to go back, and that doesn't
Yeah.
come. And then
Yeah.
he asks the person who's selling the material statue of the god कि ये चल क्यों नहीं रहा है, मैंने आपसे खरीदा है, like इसमें बैटरी क्यों नहीं चल रही essentially, because
Yeah.
it's not, I asked for something and I'm not getting it, so can you please fix it.
Hmm.
So, and that sort
Yeah.
of, that's a running gag, I think, like a lot of times. And then sort of that leads to the whole conflict of the film, I think, in the sense of wrong and right God. Uh, and I think one of the big reasons why I think I remembered PK more than sort of, oh my God, it's a really good and precise takedown of the whole religion thing is it leaves room open for pretty much everything in terms of
Yeah.
you can read it as an atheist text or an agnostic text or as a religious text, and you'll come out totally
Hmm.
fine with, like, there is nothing, it doesn't need to show God. That is the big thing
Exactly.
about it, which I think is the
Yeah.
problem with Oh My God, because Akshay Kumar plays God in that. And it's sort of,
Hmm.
it's a very, I think, slightly conservative knock against whatever your
Hmm.
whole thing of, I'm
It is, I think,
critiquing
oh my
it.
God is only distinguishing between true God versus the material symbolism
वो तो इसमें
that
है,
we
but इसमें,
associate
but
with
I
it.
think it's subtler in PK just because it doesn't show the god. I think there's one
Yeah,
really
exactly. Yeah.
telling dialogue where towards the end,
It's
and
more utilitarian, I think,
yeah, yeah, a
in that
humanist,
sense. Yeah.
very humanist, which I
Yeah.
think is in keeping
Yeah.
with a lot of his all of his
Yeah.
films also. But yeah, he's
And which explains the kind of numbers it did worldwide at that
yeah,
time. Even
yeah,
still, it earned like 750 crores worldwide,
yeah, a
which was
lot,
like a
a lot.
monumental thing.
Yeah,
I think the second highest grosser at that time, there was a stark difference, deficit of 250 crores.
yeah,
So it remained the top grossing film for a long time.
yeah.
I think it broke Three Idiots record, right?
I think so. Yeah,
He
yeah,
was
but I think.
breaking his own record.
Yeah, I think one of the big I really like the basically the final confrontation with Saurabh Shukla's character and then whatever follows
Hmm.
in terms of how it's revealed that Sarfaraz, which is the Sushant Singh Rajput character, and Anushka Sharma character separated because of a
Hmm.
misunderstanding,
Yeah.
melodramatic misunderstanding, but very much caused
Hmm.
by religious stereotyping
Conflict.
and all
Yeah.
that stuff. So I think I really like that. And I think one of the two of the things which I was like, my God, they actually used to say all this in openly in movies. One of them was uh, like one of them was very explicitly कि वो मुसलमान था
Hmm.
इसीलिए आपने ये कहा था or whatever like that. Like one of them is that, and then he's like गलत और सही क्या है कौन बताएगा. like thappa kahan hai, essentially he says
Oh,
that,
that is
which I
yeah,
think is like really like strong, in terms of even statements in general, whatever
yeah.
one says. So I think that was something that really struck. And then
I
the
think
wrong,
Hirani does this very, very well that he encapsulates these complex ideas that are, always
yeah,
going to be relevant, and he finds these extremely, extremely quotable dialogues to
yeah,
get them seeded and morphed into the discourse. Like
yeah,
all is well.
yeah,
Thabba kidhar
all is
hai.
well.
It's like
Yeah,
you just hear those dialogues and you will get the entire thematic context of
yeah,
what the film meant, right?
yeah,
So I think that's where great writing comes into play, where your single takeaway from the film might just be a singular dialogue, like a
yeah,
three-word dialogue, and it would just encapsulate the
yeah.
entire feeling that the movie would leave you with.
Absolutely. And I mean, just I
Yeah.
mean, I'm a big fan of. I
Which
mean, I'm
also
gen.
there's none of that in Dunki, so that explains why it is so not
I
so
mean, Dunki
memorable.
has a very conflicting. It has very strange, like conflicting, not in a good sense, messaging also
Yeah,
sometimes, which is like very weird. Anyway, like I love Anushka Sharma's bit of narration towards the end where and this is another really great touch. He takes her to preserve her memory. He takes
yeah,
a lot of batteries with him to go back
yeah,
wherever he's going back, so that he can keep on playing the cassette player in which he's recorded all
yeah,
her voices, and he lies to
yeah,
her essentially because she loves someone else, that इसमें
yeah.
यहाँ पे ट्रैफिक की आवाजें हैं or whatever, like small
Yes.
things, and she discovers it and she gives whatever. But I love
Hmm.
where she is basically like वो बहुत कुछ हमें बहुत कुछ सीख के गया, बहुत कुछ सिखा के
Hmm.
झूठ
Hmm.
बोलना सीख के गया, or which I
Hmm.
think is like
Which is like,
really, which is
oh,
lovely.
dark.
And I think and
Yeah.
then हम लोग को सिखा के गया कि प्यार का असली मतलब क्या है, or something like that.
Hmm.
But for all this goodness at the end of the day, like you get your
Hmm.
happy ending, and you get a very
Hmm.
comical re intro, almost like a sequel. But in the
Hmm.
sequel, I was noticing this time, it's like 1 year has passed, and he comes with Ranbir Kapoor from the spaceship down,
Oh, yes.
and
Yeah.
uh, and he's like, uh one main thing is he slaps on like stickers of gods again on his cheeks, and he's like,
Yeah.
whenever someone comes to hit you, show these cheeks to someone and they'll not hit you,
Yeah.
which I think is
Yeah.
like good in the sense that you know it undercuts a lot of the thing that he has changed everything. It's almost like
Hmm.
things will sort of reset almost to
Yeah.
their
Which they did.
default setting, which I mean they didn't default, they became worse. But
Yeah.
so yeah, but I mean I'd be so amazed how a film like PK plays now to an audience.
If it's released.
No, now
If
that
it
won't
were
be
released.
released up to, but hey, luckily
Yeah.
it's on in the public
Yeah.
conscience and consciousness. So
Hmm.
yeah, a lot of again, its value
And
is
the
there. Yeah.
its effective messaging in itself is a testament to how the current day authorities are constantly trying to go back despite its decade old film,
Mm.
constantly going back and dismantling whatever it uh, praised
Hmm.
through its comedic elements
I
and
mean, yeah, they'll
putting them
just
in a
put it
very
on
different
Amir
wrong
Khan, no?
context. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. Yeah,
Mm.
and that's just solidifies the film's importance.
Yeah. No, no, but I mean, I think one of the things that did come away with after seeing these movies was these are really essentially very dark movies rendered really,
Hmm.
nice in a way which is
Yeah.
not condescending to the darkness of the material itself. Like, I'd
Yes.
never come across these films thinking that the world has changed. I think that the
Hmm.
world this film is creating is an escape from the world we are in, essentially.
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
escapist cinema at its best, I
Best.
feel,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
Yeah. It is.
doesn't, yeah. So I think escapist cinema, which then makes you ponder about your reality, which I think is the
Hmm.
best way a commercial
To
film,
go about.
yeah, like that's
Yeah.
how commercial filmmaking should be, shouldn't it?
Definitely.
But yes, others will disagree, as I have consistently been subject to. But any more thoughts,
How
Aryan?
did PK? How's the letterbox discourse around PK? I have not even bothered to check.
I was reading through a little bit of it, and some of them were like,
Hmm.
it is disappointing as a Hirani film. I was like, I don't really understand because it hits a lot of those beats. Um,
Hmm.
I think the second half is an issue, definitely, which I think
Yeah, yeah.
people are really pick on that, which is fair. Uh,
Hmm.
I just think that the strong portions of it are just too strong for me to, not
Hmm. Hmm.
value them that much. And I was just rewatching today a couple of the last ending scenes because I was like, do I always cry in them like without the context of the whole movie? I didn't cry, so it's
Hmm.
probably the whole movie that needs to build up to that moment for me to cry. But yes, I said the
Hmm.
emotional manipulation. This happens in the second half where I was like, and this is the thing which happens in Dunki, which drove me mad. I was like,
Okay.
there is Sanjay Dutt's death here in
Hmm.
which happens literally all of like it's like we have to introduce one other key element so that PK has to reveal something at the final scene. So let's just get
Hmm.
Sanjay Dutt's character and someone else get like die
Hmm.
like a train blast or whatever. Though I have to
Hmm.
say that is still better than whatever happens in Dunky because it's linked to a very small instance where uh, the Saurabh Shukla character has insulted Muslims and Islamic
Hmm.
religion, and
Hmm.
it's because essentially he has done so that they have replied in a way which to protect their people. So it's like
Hmm.
really that it lays that kernel of an idea that it's because it's
Hmm.
been situated in someone else's hate that someone has responded with hate.
Responding to it, yeah.
Yeah, Dunky has the whole Tapsi character's death, which I think is just the like I think that's lazy, stupid, and
It's
quite
too lazy, yeah.
insensitive.
Because
And
it's lazy because it just forgets about it whenever it wants to forget about it.
it also
Make things
happens really
convenient.
poorly. Like just the way she
Yeah,
passes away in this in Dunky, I was like, really?
yeah.
You have done this? I've seen you pull off magical moments so much better in like earlier films.
Hmm.
I'm like,
Hmm.
किसी को make someone drunk, Raju Hirani, like so that you can at least
Hmm.
justify whatever's happening here. Because like this is just not
Hmm.
clicking. But yeah, it's sad to see that trajectory happen. But I shall prefer to stick with these four films, I think. Sanju, we are not
Definitely,
discussing. Sorry, guys. Whoever's a fan, please tell us why
yeah.
you are a fan. Because we are very curious to know. It has very good performances, though. I will agree.
Yeah.
Uh,
Even
yeah.
Vicky Kaushal is really good.
Vicky Kaushal, him, I really like Manisha Koirala and the small show role she has. So I would
Hmm.
like needed more of her. But Anushka Sharma is really bad in that film. Also because
Yeah,
her wig is terrible. But that's another matter for another time.
yeah.
Any more thoughts on Raju Hirani? We will close this
I
chapter
just
otherwise till
hope
the next
that
Raju Hirani movie.
I think I don't want to say this, but I think the fact that his kind of storytelling has kind of diluted into this uh, very bland sort of storytelling avenue is
Hmm.
might be because Vidhu Chopra hasn't been associated with his latter two projects, maybe,
Yeah,
or
that's
was
one
he?
of the
He
thing.
wasn't the producer of Sanju either,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, he wasn't. But that's no, I think he
Involved.
was. When was Sanju
I think
released?
he wasn't, but he just credited him
Sure,
because he was supposed to be associated with the entire project, but then those things happened and he kind of distanced himself out of
sure.
it. But just to maintain his brand, he was like, no, no, I still give you credits because yeah, I want to sell my movie.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I
no,
think
but I think
that's what I hope.
a lot of people have sort of pushed that idea. But I would
Yeah.
say I would like not to defend him as such, but like see, I don't think
Mhm.
Sanju is a project which he could anyways do well.
Anyways, be yeah,
I just
yeah,
think that's like a total different ball game of a movie.
yeah.
Dunky, I don't know, the only thing that is holding me back from saying
Mm.
that Vidhu Vinod. I mean, of course, 12th Fail came out and sort of blew this out of the water in comparison.
Yeah.
But no, I think the issue with something like Dunky might somewhat also be the whole SRK. just the aura of
Hmm.
the star and needing to service the star a little bit. And also, I think I was mentioning to Varun and Amartya is that in that
Hmm.
film ideals are not opposed, so maybe he's trying to break away from his template but not being able to break away from it successfully, like
Hmm.
I
Because
there's
he's a
so much.
traditionalist now, after all, at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
So I
yeah. And
think
there's
it might be.
so many things in that movie just irk me to no end. Like, I just think it's
Hmm.
underdeveloped at certain points. Like, I'm like, basic stuff is wrong with
Hmm.
that movie, which is not wrong with his other movies. So I was like very
Hmm.
disappointed on those levels more than anything else. But TK still doing well. What do
Yeah.
I know? People like Ho gaye hum kahan, what do I know? Like, like that's the sort of thing that gives me an existential crisis. But it's okay. Should we end on that sour note, I suppose, considering
Who do you think might, step into this brand of filmmaking, this brand of storytelling, I should say, considering
as
the
an
current
actor,
landscape in Bollywood? No, no, as a
the
filmmaker.
filmmaker, this
Yeah,
as in like
like
Raju
basically
Hirani
whatever
brand?
we mentioned. Yeah, like basically
No,
whatever
I
we
I,
mentioned,
I think
building these broad strokes,
you'll
heightened
get
worlds, and then,
you'll get more of Rocky or Rani, except
hmm,
the imitators will also lose the charm of whatever there is in that
yeah,
movie, I think, which
yeah,
we already have actually.
yeah,
Badrinath ki Dulhaniya is that
yeah,
essentially.
hmm,
So वो मिलेगा सर अब तो ज्यादा और we get
hmm,
खो गए हम का, which please for goodness
hmm.
sakes stop. Like, please keep me away from that. Uh, Anyone who references a movie like that in the review, I will avoid that movie. So
Hmm.
yes, no, I am through that sort of filmmaking. I just can't with that. वो और गहराइयां
Hmm.
तो है जो मेरा दिमाग खराब कर चुकी हैं थोड़ा सा. I'm like, ये नहीं
Hmm.
होएगा मुझसे. आप मुझे जीरो दिखा दो फिर से. मैं जीरो देख लूंगा. I was thinking of rewatching Zero actually. But anyways, doesn't matter.
I might finally watch it.
You won't like it. I don't think you like it.
I recently watched Veer Zara, by the way. I told you,
Sir,
right?
वीर ज़ारा and Zero में बहुत फर्क है. वीर ज़ारा is like a 5 on 5 type of film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
think.
I wasn't like
I hope.
that blown away, but yeah.
Okay, I hope
I liked
then.
it a lot, but still, whatever.
Hmm. ठीक है, ठीक है. Okay, so we will end on that note. Better than the note I was about to
He
end on.
has a project, right? Oh, I just read today.
Hmm.
I just saw a headline that
Hmm.
he's officially greenlit Munnabhai 3.
Oh.
So, yes, he'll officially be involved with it as a director.
Hmm.
But let's see when that comes out
Okay, please come
and
back to
how it
form,
turns out.
sir. Cause yes, I can't see that franchise die
Yeah.
bad death because I do really like those characters. But yes, thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. I hope you enjoyed our uh, positive take on Rajkumar Hirani's filmography. Uh, I know some people had to deal with a lot of negativity on our live stream, so we will counterbalance that in our
Hmm.
podcast episodes, and hopefully in the next week also, which is giving us Merry Christmas by Sriram Raghavan
Yeah.
and Abhishek Chaube's uh, what is the soup? I forgot the flavor of the soup. What was it called? Killer soup. Sorry, yes.
Killer Soup. Yeah.
So yes, we'll be discussing those two films, one on live stream, one on a proper sort of podcast recording. So please look forward to that and let us know what else you want us to discuss. You can follow Aryan at Aryan Talks Film on Instagram, or you can follow the Red Sparrow, which is also handled by Aryan majorly. And you can follow me at Terminal Cinema for stupid stories because that's the only thing I do now.
Oh
Uh,
God.
Posts have yet to be made, which I will actually start posts again since I'm doing like a Stanley Kubrick marathon this
Yes.
month.
Hmm.
So yes, thank you so much for listening, and khatam.